Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from November 19th, 2021, and I'm recording this on May 20th, 2022. As always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Town Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Those are the two lists I use. They each put out a list of 10 books each week that are hot or trending that week, that there's an increase in sales, increase in value on. And we wait 6 months and look back and see how they're doing, see what factors caused them to get hot, what factors have affected them since, so that we all do a better job when we're chasing hot books of them in the moment of thinking about why is the book hot, so that we make better decisions about which one we buy, which one we're patient on. If you've been watching this list during 2022, you will notice that the operative word is patience, as the vast majority of books have been backing up. Part of that is just the overall market, but part of that is the longer term trends as well, in terms of what makes these books hot and what reason not, and the reason to be patient. I will say it's been pretty interesting. A lot of people have asked me over the years, why 6 months? Because it only takes 6 months to see some of these changes. So, and actually, if you wait longer, sometimes these changes are hidden by the fact that other things happen. So, without further ado, let's get into this week's list. We got 18 books to talk about. And up front, we got 7 covers to start us off. And first up, we have Strange Academy, number 13, the Art Adams variant. This is also, I forgot to put this on the list last week, the first appearance of Gas Lamp, which is part of what was going on here. Interestingly enough, switched lists, and according to the list from last week, when it was on list, and according to this week, it was actually going for less than last week. Only the raw copies were only going for around 25. Last week we were talking about it was being 35, which made it an I'll Be Back. Steady / I'll Be Back, because now raw copies are going for 20 to 40. 9.8 will cost you 125 to 200. Now it's kind of a worth it. At 25, it was probably worth it. At 35 last week, it was an I'll Be Back. So it shows you it doesn't take a lot of change in value to actually potentially change kind of the result of where you're at. A lot of fans for Art Adams. I know there's some speculation interest in this Gas Lamp character. So this book has been pretty steady overall. And if you got it on the lower end of when it was peaking, then it was probably worth it. If you got it on the higher end, you probably should have been an I'll Be Back. Next, we have Star Wars, The High Republic Adventures, number 10. The Nicoletta Baldari 1 in 10 variant. This 1 in 10 jumped up to $20 at release. 1 in 10 going for 20, so double ratio. Usually means it settles between ratio and double. This is now a $10 to $20 book. This one followed the ratio rules almost exactly, becoming a down and an I'll Be Back. There's a reason I call them the rules, because this is very much the pattern you see with these when they go to certain heights. Next, we're going to move on to Mark Spector, Moon Knight, number 55, the first Stephen Platt art from way back in 1993. This book was jumping up. There's a little bit of a resurgence in interest in Stephen Platt, I feel like, in the last year. Raw copies of this book were all the way up to 150. 9.8 was going for 400. This one has backed up. I thought at the time maybe worth it, because it was, rediscovering an artist. But this one has not sustained. Raw copies are now going for around 175 to 100. 9.8 will cost you 3 to 325. So this definitely turned into an I'll Be Back. Worth waiting to get away from any kind of buzz or hype that sometimes happens when people kind of rediscover or whatever was going on exactly here. Next, we have another book that's on the list for the second week in a row, and this is Deadpool, Black, White, and Blood, number 4. The Dan Panosian 1 in 25, also the first U.S. appearance of Sakura Spider. Back then, this doubled from last week. Last week we were talking about it as a $55 book on 125. Now, by the second week, it was all the way up to 110. You see this sometimes with the 1 in 25. It's one thing that throws the rule a little bit is sometimes it takes till the second week for them to really to really peak at 110. So at that point, you're thinking 4 times ratio plus that one should hold. But this one did not. It held well above double ratio, though. It's a $60 to $115 book right now. So pretty wide range, but definitely still going for double to quadruple ratio. But definitely an I'll be back from the peak. 9.8 was just one sale that we're looking at $250. So this is one of those 1 in 25s that took off in the second week even more, but it's still kind of backed up a little bit overall. Next, we have Profit number 1. This is sort of just a somewhat, not really hard to find, but a random kind of McFarlane cover that people were chasing. I think this had to do with, I think he was doing one of his signings around here. I'm not sure. There was a little buzz about Prophet getting a movie, I think was part of it also. Because we did have those Youngblood books the last couple weeks, which haven't amounted to anything. Anyway, this one from 2000 jumped up to $150 for raw copies, which seems like a ton for a book that was probably pretty well printed, and it has turned into an absolute trap on this. Marginal dumpster fire, $45 to $75 on this one now, so less than half of what it was going for back then. Definitely a trap, and a book that, yeah, should have just been a little patient on this one. Wasn't really, I think the option news related to Profit that people were talking about is what caused people to go back and refine this cover and overpay. Next, we have Street Fighter number 1, the Del Auto Virgin variant. This is actually a 2-book set. There was actually a Ryu and Ken covers. The Ryu cover was going for $85 to $100 back then. Now it's a $20 to $60 book. 9.8 only cost you $75 to $125. So another book that has turned into a trap, despite being limited to 400, just wasn't sustainable on this particular cover or book. Our last pure cover of the week is Sheena, Queen of the Jungle number 1, the Sakari variant that was limited to 500. Gorgeous Sheena cover back then was going for $50. Would love to be able to tell you the real trend here, but there's only been 3 sales, so not a lot of demand. There are just a few of these listed. They've sold for $12, $31, and $60. So well below what it was going for back then, 1 above, but this is definitely a down, and I'll be back. Not a lot of push for this book. Definitely would be waiting to try to find me a bargain if I was really wanting this Sheena cover. With that, we have one kind of cover / comic buzz book that we're going to talk about next, and that is House of Slaughter number 1, the second print red foil, 1 per store. Thank you. So they did a second print, but within the second print, they gave a 1 per store variant. This red foil variant was going for $30 to $50 back then, which on a 1 per store, that's about, those are usually about equivalent to 1 in 25s. Seems like anyway, in the pricing and stuff, the way they usually fall out. So based on that, you're probably guessing it's going to be less than double ratio. So you're looking at, typically a round ratio or below. That's what this one has done, $10 to $30 now. There was a 9.8 sale. It only went for $28. Part of this is just that the House of Slaughter was not nearly as well received as Something is Killing the Children. I know they just started their second arc, and it seems like people were more excited about this kickoff of the second arc than they were about that first one, but we will see. So I put this as straight cash back then, thinking, oh, this is gonna just ride the Something's Killing the Children wave. It did not. It turned into a trap. So with that, we're moving fully into Comic Buzz for the next 2 books, and first up we have Spawn number 165. First appearance of Mandarin Spawn. This is part of the expanded Spawn universe. We're getting other stories. So this version of Spawn was going to be coming back and being used. Raw copies of this are $130 to $150. Where previously it had been like a $90 to $100 book. So it was always a pretty expensive book. This was kind of in the low print run era of Spawn. But then it jumped up to $130, $150. Now it's back. It's 1 to $170. So it's kind of, you're getting a pretty wide range on this. The 9.8 sale went for $200. I'm putting this as kind of steady. I'll be back, because more of the sales are on that $100 to $150 130, 140 side of things than on the 140 to 170 side of things. You can definitely find some deals here and get it back down close to where it was before. But still, a very popular Spawn book and still maintaining a pretty good value. Next, we have Dark Reign, Zodiac #1, the first appearance of Zodiac. This is basically the Moon Knight villain that was coming back in the current series, so there was some buzz about Zodiac because they were bringing him back. Plus, I think there was a little bit of spec here that you could say for the Disney Plus show, which obviously did not pan out. Back then, raw copies of this were jumped all the way up to $30 to $40 on the news that they were bringing this character back. Now it's a $5 to $25 book, with most of those sales being 10-ish. So this one definitely also turned into a trap, backed up more than I expected. Several of these I was way too generous on this particular week, and just going, I'll be back, but have turned into traps. So we're 10 books in, 8 books to go, and we're going to move into Disney Plus stuff, or just MCU stuff. First up, we have our one Star Wars book of the week, and this is Star Wars #2, the first appearance of Obi-Wan, Han Solo, and Chewie. As you can guess, back then it was related to news related to the Obi-Wan show, and as you can guess with it launching next week, this book is still doing quite well. It is our one book that is up this week. Back then they were saying raw copies were averaging around 200. Now they're kind of 60 to 250 with those high-grade ones all in that $200 area. So that's been actually pretty steady. But the 9.8s of this book have jumped significantly. Back then a 9.8 went for $2,400. The most recent 9.8 sales now are going for $5,000 to $5,500. So more than double, more than 100% increase on those 9.8s. So I put this as our up and straight cash book. Be interesting to see in another 6 months. My guess is we'll be back down from this where it is right now. So, next we have Hit Monkey #1. So this wasn't Disney Plus. This was actually a Hulu Marvel show. This was kind of the second appearance of Hit Monkey, second series #1. It was a one shot. Then they went to this #1 for a little mini series on Hit Monkey. Back then with the show coming out, $25 to $30 for a raw copy of this. Now it's a $10 to $20 book. Still got good reviews, but nobody's thinking about it. So it's back to an I'll be back. The book is back down kind of where it was before. And that's just very typical when you move away from these shows. 6 months away from the show and nobody's thinking about it. And that's just the way this kind of tends to work. The next several books are related to Disney Plus Day. First up, we have Ultimate Fantastic Four #21, the first cameo appearance of Marvel Zombies. And this came from reports that we were getting a continuation of the Marvel Zombies we saw in the What If show as an animated series for Disney Plus. So that caused raw copies to go to $25. A 9.8 hit $250. Now they're $5 to $20, so this is definitely an I'll be back. No real news on what the timing of this is going to be. Animated shows tend to take a while. I assume they were probably already working on it when they said that, but still, I don't think we're getting it in 22. I think it's going to be like 23 before we would get this. So yeah, this book became an I'll be back. I will be the first to admit I do not understand some of the obsession with zombies and zombie movies and Marvel zombies. It's not something I need, but people love it. But right now, this is definitely a better time to invest in this if you want to than it was 6 months ago. Next, we have Moon Knight #188, the first appearance of the Sun King, Amon-Ra's avatar. And this is very interesting to me, this book, because it bucks a lot of trends. Back then, raw copies were up to $20 as people were speculating this might be who Ethan Hawke's character was in the Moon Knight show. I think we're far enough out from the Moon Knight show, having been out now, that I can say that he's not this character. So this did not pay off. This was spec that did not pay off. And yet, this book has remained very steady, if not even maybe slightly up in kinds. It's now a $15 to $35 book for raw copies. 9.8 going for $140. I think it's overall, it's a little bit of an I'll be back, but it's been pretty steady. Most of the sales are in that $20 range. So even though this spec didn't pay off, the show is come and gone, people are still buying this book and this character. So that's an interesting thing. Typically, even when characters appear, like even this far out from the show, you would already be starting to see the downward trend. Not so in this case, and this is a character that didn't appear. So, next we have Fantastic Four number 94, another book that was on the list last week. The first appearance of Agatha Harkness, on the news that we were getting the House of Harkness. And back then, raw copies were averaging Switch list, same prices as we talked about last week. $6.15 for raw copies, $9.8 up to $1,100. Now raw copies will range $50 to $250, so only $250 on like a really, really high grade raw copy. 9.0 is down from $1,100 down to $600 to $700. The raw side, this is a dumpster fire. You could argue just a trap on the 9.0 there. But yeah, even though we're still getting this show, we're away from the news. People aren't thinking about it. We've gotten, even with, she didn't appear in WandaVision, but we got more of Scarlet Witch, not in WandaVision, in Doctor Strange. We got more of Scarlet Witch. We didn't see her again. People aren't thinking about this anymore. People are not as interested as they were then, and this book is backed up a lot as a result. Next, we have Daredevil number 9, first appearance of Echo. And this was as we were leading up, right in the lead up to Hawkeye. I don't know. Yeah, I don't think Hawkeye had started yet, but we got the announcement, or confirmation. We had already gotten the announcement. We got confirmation at Disney Plus Day that Echo was getting her own series. So that caused raw copies of this book to jump to 165. 9.8s were hitting 725. Raw side, this has been pretty steady. $90 to $200 for a raw copy of this. High grade stuff, $150, $200. So in that same range as back then, but the 9.8s have backed up. So I did put this down as an I'll be back because a lot of the sales are 9.8s. So 9.8s are only $400 to $500 now. So borderline trap on the 9.8 side, but I put it as an I'll be back overall. Series, I think it's supposed to maybe be the end of this year, first of 23. So we got a little while yet. We get a trailer at some point. This book may ramp back up. I know there was people that really loved her appearance in the Hawkeye show. There were people that were some mixed reviews on that, but so it'll be interesting to see where they go with Echo going forward. Last Disney Plus Day book was X-Men Adventures number 1, and this is the first comic of the animated X-Men series from the 90s. And this hit the list because they announced that we were getting a return of that animated series. It was going to pick up where that series left off coming out in 2023. That caused people to chase this book. Raw copies were going for $25. A 9.8 jumped all the way up to $400. This book has cooled. $5 to $20 now for raw copies. 9.8s are still set in $300 to $350, which is a really big number for a book. If you can find a high grade copy for $20 and sell it for $300 to $350, that's a pretty good swing. But overall, this is definitely down, and I'll be back. It'll be interesting to see what this book does as we get closer this time next year when maybe we're getting the series. Last book on the list, I put at the bottom under MCU, and I don't really remember exactly why this book is in this location. This is Symbiote Spider-Man Alien Reality number 3 from 2020. And basically Spider-Man becomes Doctor Strange's apprentice in this alternate reality. I don't know if this was sort of people specking on this book following I guess in the run-up to No Way Home, I guess is really where this was going from. As Doctor Strange is supposed to be in the movie. I guess that's really what this is. I didn't make myself a note, but now that I'm reading it, it's like, oh, that makes sense. So yeah, with Doctor Strange going to be in No Way Home, I think that's where they were chasing this book. Raw copies back then were up to 20, 9.8 was up to 200. That's not exactly what happened in the movie. So now raw copies are 5 to 15, 9.8 are 70 to 90. So this one definitely turned into a trap as No Way Home has come and gone. So yeah, that makes sense. No Way Home. So that is this week's list. We had 18 books to talk about. Again, 14 of them dropped in value. Only 3 remained steady. Only 1 went up. And that has as much to do with timing probably as anything, although I think it is a really good long-term book anyway, and that's Star Wars number 2. But yeah, so another week where it would have been paid to be patient. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.